Hello there, finance friends. Welcome back to our second video in our discussion of the home purchase and mortgages. In our first video, we talked about some of the big picture ideas, kind of the big picture systems thinking, the big impact of buying a home. And we talked about how much a home actually costs in terms of the upfront cost and the pity, and then your ongoing costs. And we did a couple of calculations. Okay. In this lecture video, we're going to turn to mortgages. Okay. We're going to turn to mortgages. And the mortgage is basically the loan for the house. So when you buy a home, you're going to put a little bit down in cash and you're going to finance the rest. You're going to borrow the remainder amount. That remainder that you're going to borrow, that's the size of the loan, and that's your mortgage. So a mortgage is a loan that's used to purchase a home. A mortgage behaves like a traditional installment loan, which we learned before will generally have a fixed payment. Now, it is possible that when you get your mortgage, you're going to have a fixed interest rate or a variable interest rate. If you get a fixed interest rate, you're going to have a fixed monthly payment. If you get a variable interest rate, it might vary. We're going to keep our analysis really simple right now and just focus on the plain vanilla mortgage, the 30-year fixed rate loan. Okay, the 30-year, this is the plain vanilla mortgage, the 30-year fixed rate loan, fixed APR, fixed percentage. Okay, if you take out a mortgage with a 30-year fixed rate, you're going to have a fixed payment every month, the same amount, predictable, easy to know, easy to control, easy to plan around, the same payment every year for the life of the loan. Most loans are 30 years or 360 months. This means that if you get the plain vanilla 30-year fixed rate loan, you're going to know what your payment is for the next 360 months. But the important thing to point out, as we learned about when we had our lecture on credit and loans and amortization, within that fixed payment, a portion of that fixed payment will go to principal repayment. In other words, a portion will go to pay the loan balance, and another portion will go to pay the interest. Okay? Remember, whenever we're talking about a loan, we've got a few big ideas. We've got the size of the loan, we've got the interest rate, we have the term. Okay? So when it comes to a mortgage, our big terms include the principal. This is the amount that you're taking out, the balance of the mortgage loan. You have your interest rate, which we know we can call the APR, which can either be a fixed rate, where the rate stays the same, or a variable rate, also called a floating rate, where the rate can change. Okay. People have mixed opinions. Generally speaking, fixed rate loans are just a little bit higher APR than variable rate. But in my opinion, and you have to do your own research and learn some things outside of these lectures, but in my opinion, fixed rate loan is well worth it. It's worth paying a slightly higher APR to get the predictability. The other thing is variable rate loans, they can adjust, and they often adjust upward based on inflation or other macroeconomic variables. So if you get a variable rate loan, it might be when you first get the loan a little less than the fixed rate loan, but the fixed rate will always be the fixed rate, predictable, right? You have clarity on what your outflows are going to be. From a systems lens, that's very valuable. A variable rate loan can adjust. And sometimes, if you're not careful, the variable rate loan can adjust to a level where the payments go up, and now you've got big, big cash flow issues. And then the third idea is your loan term. In other words, the length of the loan. Most loans in America are 30 years, but there are 15-year loans, okay? So these are what mortgages are. There's a lot of ways to do mortgage math, but we're going to go back and we're going to use our old friend, the TVM calculator. Let's do a little quick primer on how we're going to use that. So let's open up real quick. We see here our old friend, we have our finance calculator. We remember that we have 5 variables: future value, payment, interest rate, the N, and the present value. We remember from the TVM lectures that using this calculator is a scavenger hunt. That's all it is. No need to be afraid of it. There's 5 variables total. Either I or the problem I give you will give you 4. You search for the missing one. Whatever one you search for, you're going to click. So let's suppose that we're trying to solve for the payment. We're going to click payment. Notice that payment, the one that we're searching for, goes gray. And the other 4 variables, which we know, future value, interest, N, and present value, go blue. And we also have along here space to enter those numbers. Just a scavenger hunt, okay? Think of it this way: present value, future value, N, I, and PMT. In the context of a mortgage, the present value is the loan amount, the loan balance. Whatever amount you originally take out in that loan, the original size of the mortgage, or over time, the balance due on the mortgage, that's your present value. Your future value is how much you're going to owe on the mortgage, the size of the mortgage, the balance of the mortgage at some point in the future. For any loan like this, the eventual future value is going to be 0 because you're paying it off. So we're going to default. There'll be some changes, but we're going to default to the idea that the future value of your mortgage is 0 because you're going to pay it off. N is the number of periods. Now, here's where we have to do an adjustment. Let's say that we're doing a 30-year loan, but loan payments are made monthly. So whatever the number of years is, we have to multiply by 12 to convert it from annual to monthly. Okay? Your I is your APR. It's the loan's interest rate. But because APR is the annual percentage rate, the A stands for annual, and loans are monthly for a mortgage, we have to divide by 12 to get whatever the number is going to be. Okay? Remember, TVM calculations default to an annual measurement. If you're going to monthly, you have to multiply N times 12 to expand it to the number of months, but you have to divide I by 12 to take the annual rate down to the monthly rate. So don't forget those adjustments. And then the PMT is just going to be the monthly loan payment. So let's use some TVM tools. Let's solve some problems. Let's get you feeling good about mortgages. Okay, this is powerful knowledge. It's going to feel kind of weird at first, but just do some practice questions. If you have any issues with this, reach out to me or go back to the tutorials from the time value lectures. Go back to the answer keys and the advice that I gave you in those tutorial videos, and you can solve it. Okay, let's go back to and actually, in our first video, I sort of told you to trust me, and I told you that the mortgage is going to be $23.98 a month. Let's see where I got that from. In our original example, how much are you financing? What's your monthly payment? What's your total interest paid? Well, we know that the home price was going to be $500,000. We know that we were putting 20% down, so that was 500,000 times 20% was 100,000, and therefore the amount financed was going to be 400,000. Notice you could have also just avoided that middle step and gotten your amount financed by doing, in this case, 500,000 times 80%, because 80%, if you're putting 20% down, then 80% is what you're financing. What's our monthly payment? Well, sounds really stressful, but it's okay. Use TVM. We know that our present value is our loan amount, not the house price, but the amount of the loan. Okay? Whatever the house price is, you reduce that by the cash down payment and finance the difference. So that's going to be $400,000. The future value, we're going to pay it off, so it's going to be zero. We're going to pay it off. It's a 30-year mortgage, so in 30 years times 12 months per year, our N is going to be 360. Our I, that's our APR divided by 12. If we inflate the months by 12, we have to divide the APR by 12. So this is going to be equal to 6% divided by 12, or 0.5%. And we're asking what the payment is. That's what we're solving for. So we put the question marks there. And no problem. Let's go back to our financial calculator. And let's plug it in. We're solving for PMT. N is going to be 360. The interest rate is going to be 0.5. The present value is going to be 400,000. The future value is going to be 0. We've entered the 4 numbers that we've been given. We're now going to hit hit calculate to do the scavenger hunt. We calculate that, and there you go. 2398.20. That's our payment. 2398.20. 2398.20. Notice that this represents the P and the I of our pity. I want to point something else out to you. If these numbers didn't already scare you, let's ask the question how much interest you're going to pay on this mortgage. There's a couple ways to get it. Here's one way. If you're paying 2398.20 every month, and you're paying that for 360 months, your total payments will be 863,352. Okay, that's going to be your total payments. Well, if those total payments were on a loan of 400,000, you subtract the amount of the actual loan itself, the loan principal, and the difference 463, 352. That, my amigos, is the interest that you're going to pay. Okay. If you're asking yourself, did he do that right? Am I really going to pay more money in interest than I did for the loan itself? Yes, you are. That's just the way a mortgage works. So we see the interest there. Okay, so you can calculate the interest that way, the total payment minus the loan amount. But there is a simpler way. If you go back to our friends here at the financial calculator, you can see that they actually tell you here the sum of all the payments and the total interest paid. So they basically did up there in that little summary box what we did the hard way. If you scroll down, by the way, you'll also see here the amortization schedule. So you can see here the first column is the period, that's the month. It goes from 1 all the way down, way down to 360. So we get all the payments down to the last one. We see in the columns the present value, which is the loan balance. We see the payment, which is how much you're going to pay. Notice that your payment is 239820 all the way down because it's fixed. We know that within that payment, one part goes to the principal, one part goes to the interest. We see the interest component. Okay. So there's a lot of data here, um, including some kind of scary data about how long it takes to pay off half the loan. Think about this. This loan is 400,000. It's 30 years. If you were to ask somebody who didn't know much about mortgage math and say, "Hey, listen, I have a $400,000 mortgage. It's a 30-year mortgage. How long would it take me to pay half of it off?" They might say, "Well, 400,000, half of that is 200,000." Okay. 30 years, half that is 15 years. It'll take you 15 years. They're wrong. Check this out. The future value, this column here, this is the loan balance at the end of that period. So in period one, you had a balance of 400,000. You applied 2,000 of your payment to interest. So the difference went to your principal. And this right here is what you ended with. Let's see how long it takes to get that balance down to 200,000. Well, it's way more than 15 years. $200,000. Look, we barely right here, we get at month 252. It takes us 252 months to get the loan balance down to 200,000. That's 21 years. 252 months divided by 12, 21 years. So think about that. The interest burden is so high, especially at the beginning of the loan, that it takes you 21 years to cut your mortgage in half. That's a real depressing thought, but there's a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. Because if it takes you 21 years to kill off the first half of your mortgage, it only takes you 9 years to kill off the second half. Why is that? Well, we learned before in the lecture on amortization, time travel. There's ways, there's good news in here that we can apply to help us get the mortgage down quicker and save us a lot of interest, okay? If you forget that, go back to the lecture on loans and amortization. We talked about being a time traveler. There's little things that we can do to accelerate the principal and push us forward and reduce our loan window, okay? But anyway, with that said, so now we've got our payment. We're looking good. This one right here was you were committed to buying the house that cost 500 and this was your interest. Okay. Let's go to another example though. Let's say that based on my thrilling first mortgage, you're sort of afraid of buying too much house. and you do your own calculations and you know that you're going to get BS'd by the mortgage lender and by the real estate agent because it's in their interest because they get paid on commission to get you to buy too much house. So you're not going to listen to them. Do your own research, apply your own 2836 rule so you're nice and tight and in control. So suppose that you do your research, you look at your numbers, and you determine that you can safely afford $2,100 a month. Notice that in this example here, you started off with the home price and then figured out what your mortgage would be based on that. In this example, you're being a little bit more prudent. You're going to start off with how much mortgage you can afford and work backwards to figure out how much house you can buy. How do we do that with mortgage math and a TVM calculator? Well, scavenger hunt, not a big deal. We know that you're still going to pay the house off, so FV is 0. We know it's going to still be a 360-month, 30-year loan. And because we're using the same lending terms, so we're keeping 6%, this is going to be 0.5%. In this case, we know that your PMT is going to be negative 2,100, negative because you're sending the money out. So in this case, we're solving for the PV. We're asking what's the loan amount that is safe for you to take out if you can afford that payment per month. So it's just a small little tweak. And that's another great thing with these financial calculators. They're really nice because all you have to do is change one variable and you're set. So we're going to go up here. We're now solving for present value. We're going to keep N at 360, interest at 0.5. We're going to make the PMT negative 2,100. 2,100 because that's the amount that you determined you could safely afford and be comfortable cash-wise. And negative because when the PMT is leaving you, it's negative. We've got our 4. We solve for scavenger hunt. Calculate it. 350, 262. 350, 262. This means that the loan that you can take out, that the mortgage that you can take out is 350, 262. Now remember, your house times 80% is how much you can take out. Sorry, that was confusing. You're putting 20% down. So your house price times 80% is the size of the mortgage. That's a cleaner way to say it. Sorry, I got kind of clunky there. Your house price times 80%, that's the size of the mortgage. This means that the size of the house is going to be your mortgage divided by 0.80. So in this case, it's going to be 350, 262 divided by 0.8. This is going to be 437,827. So you can take out a loan of $350,262, but dividing that by 0.8 tells you that you can actually take out a loan to buy a house worth 437,827. Okay? Now, we learned up here in this example, there's a lot of interest. Lot of interest. Let's see what would happen to the interest if we were to go from a 30-year to a 15-year. So now let's go to a 15-year. Well, here's the thing. Everything stays the same except the N. So we're still going to have a home price of 500,000. We're still going to put down 100,000. So we're going to finance 400,000. And that's going to be our PV. In this case, so our PV is going to be 400,000. We know that our future value, we're going to pay the loan off, is going to be 0. We know that our N this time is going to be 15 years. So it's going to be 15 times 12 or 180. And we know that our I is going to be 6% divided by, divided by 12 equals 0.5. Let's plug this in to our TVM. Let's see what we can do. So let's go back to our handy dandy calculator. Okay. We're solving for PMT. Still going to be a $400,000 loan. We're still going to pay it off. We're still going to have that rate, but now we're going to only have an N of 180. Solving for PMT, 337543. So we know that our PMT is going to be 3375.43. That's a lot more money. Our original payment, 2398. Our new payment, 3375. So that's about an extra grand a month. That's a lot of cash going out. But look at the advantage of this. Go back to the screen and notice here that the total interest paid is only 207,576. So you're paying an extra 1,000 a month, but because you're taking that loan from 30 years down to 15, look at your total interest. 207, we'll say 207,577. Total interest 207,577. Up here in the original loan, yikes. You were paying 463,000 of interest. Look at how much little that is. Significant interest savings. It's a trade-off. You're having to put an extra $1,000 a month into your loan. Your payments are going to go higher, so your cash flow is going to be crimped. You're going to have to sacrifice day-to-day living. But I mean, you're going from 463 to 207,000. You're saving $260,000 of interest. Think what you can do with that money. Invest it. Maybe down the line, buy a rental property, develop some cash flow. A lot of different things you can do. Okay. So now we've seen that a 15-year loan. So what's the conclusion? With the 15-year loan compared to a 30, you're going to have a higher PMT, but you're going to pay far less interest. And that's finance and economics, my friends. There's always a trade-off. You have to find the middle ground that brings you the comfort zone between a higher payment and a lower interest burden. Okay. But anyway, that's the 15. Let's do a couple more examples. Let's go back to our 30-year loan. This is a unique question here. Suppose that you buy this house. So we're going back to our 30-year loan example. And you make the required payment. We had said that your required payment was $239,820 per month. So you're making that payment of $239,820 per month. And you do it for 8 years. And then after 8 years, you decide you want to sell the home. How much will you owe on your mortgage in 8 years? Let's think here. We know you're still taking out the mortgage of 400,000, right? That's your present value. That's the loan amount. You're going to make the scheduled payments of 2,398.20. The interest rate is still going to be 6% divided by 12 is 0.5%. The question now, and you're going to sell the house in 8 years. We're asking the question, what will your balance be in 8 years? So now your N is 96. And the future value, in other words, the loan balance in 8 years, that's what we're solving for. Now, you would think this would be a really difficult question, but it's just a scavenger hunt. Again, we're going to stay in the house for 8 years, and then we're going to sell it. What will the mortgage balance be when we sell it? How much will we owe on the house in 8 years? That's a future value question. Let's plug in the numbers. Easy peasy. And let's figure this out. So now we're solving for the future value. Still 400,000, so that stays. We're going to change our N to 96 because we wanted the future value in 8 years or 96 months. This stays the same, and our payment was 2,398.20. So look what we have here. We're asking the software, hey, software, if I have a loan for $400,000 charging me 0.5% interest every month, and I'm paying 2,398.20 per month, after 96 months, how much will I still owe? Hit calculate, and the answer, 351,089.67. 381,089.67. This will be the amount that you owe. What does that mean? Well, it means this. In 8 years, let's just say hypothetically in 8 years, you're able to sell the house for 600,000. Just make that number up. 600,000 is going to be your sales proceeds from selling the house. You're going to have to put 381, we'll make this 090, to pay off your balance on your loan. The difference, that's your profit on the sale. So the basic rule is you always want to know how to find the future value because you compare that future value balance to your sales price. If you sell the house for more than the future balance, then you pay off the loan and you keep the difference, and that's a profit. Good for you. Sometimes, though, if the real estate market craps out, suppose in this case that instead of selling it for 600, suppose that the real estate market had crapped out, so we could only sell the house for 350,000. Well, if you sell the house for 350,000, but you still owe 381,090 as your loan balance, well, you subtract that, and you, my friend, have a negative number which you still owe in addition. We call this being underwater. Not so bueno for you, okay? So that's how we use the future value. And then one last example, just to see if we can pay this house off early. Let's go back to our main example. Our payment was going to be 2398.20. That was our original payment. But let's say that you took good notes during our lecture on loans and amortization, and you've decided to try to do some time traveling and accelerate your principal. So you say, I'm going to pay an additional 250 every month. So you're making your original payment of 2398, and you're making a little bit of an extra payment of 250. So you're making a total payment of 264,820. So now your payment is 264,820. I want to know how long it will take you to pay the house off in full with this extra payment. Easy. We still took out a loan of 400. We're still going to get it down to zero. We're still paying 6% per year divided by 12 is 5% per month. Now we're solving, when I say how long will it take you, we're solving for N. Let's plug this in. And let's figure it out. Notice here, we're solving for N. Our monthly rate is still 0.5%. We took out a loan of 400, but now we're making our payments to 64820. We added 250 bucks in. We're paying it off. So what are we asking? We're saying, hey, computer, if I have a loan for $400,000 that charges 0.5% monthly, and I'm going to pay $2648.20 per month, how many ends, how many months till I pay it off? Hit calculate, and your N is 282. Your N is 282. So it's going to take you 282 months. Divide that by 12, 23 and a half years. And look what you just did. With an extra $250 a month, you shaved 6.5 years off of your mortgage. 6.5 years you saved of interest. Now you can take that money that you were already spending and now deploy it to other investments, maybe a second property or a rental property to bring in income in retirement. So we've now learned how to use the TVM calculator, not just to solve for a regular payment, but to figure out how long it will take you to pay it off if you accelerate your payments. Real quick, there was one second part to this problem. The total interest, 347,296. The total interest, 347,296.52. So here we go. And once again, you can see, 250 bucks, that's a little extra cash you had to put out. But not only did you retire your loan 6.5 years early, but look at, in our original loan, our total interest was $463,352, I believe. Now it's this. So on top of shaving 6.5 years, you saved just under 100 grand or so in interest. And I ask you, as I always ask you, what can you do with that money? Okay, that's your opportunity cost. So this, my friends, was a challenging lecture. I encourage you to go through it slowly, do the practice questions. If you have any questions on the TVM, reach out to me or go to the tutorial. But know that when it comes to mortgages, the math is conceptual, and once you get used to the TVM calculator, you can solve anything. We use it today to solve for our payment, to solve for how long it will take us to pay off a loan if we accelerate payment, to solve for the future value if we're going to sell the house. This TVM is a powerful thing, so I keep using it and keep practicing it. Thanks for your time, and I'll see you next one.